So Bo, correct?
Yes.
Is showing signs of resource guarding.
Yes.
All right. And then recently, what got you, I believe?
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and fill me in.
So basically, if he starts playing with a toy or like gets something in his mouth and he starts trying to eat it, and if it's something he's not supposed to eat and we try to take it from him, he doesn't like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's starting to be more and more things.
Yeah.
This morning it was the curtain.
Yeah, just like
curtain.
chewing on a curtain.
Like if the curtain's up and it's just chewing.
He started chewing. He's in the past chewed it, like he got a piece off of it a couple months ago, and then he knows he's not allowed obviously to chew it, but this morning he started chewing it again, and I was still in bed, but he told him to stop, and
He like starts barking at me and like charged me.
Okay. What happened at the end of the charge?
I was able to I was just telling him to sit, and I finally got him to sit, and then got him to go in his kennel, and I just put him in
that
his
was
kennel.
today, but
Yeah,
a couple weeks ago it ended with a nasty
a
bite.
bite, yeah.
Was it like full-on punctures or?
No, just bruising.
Okay, got you on the.
Yeah,
Okay.
right above the knee. But he had just lost his canine, so he didn't really have any teeth to
Puncture.
bite me with. Yeah.
Sure. And how long ago did you start to see this behavior happen?
He's been doing it since we got
Like
him.
when he was little, when we first got him, like we would give him like a chew toy, like a food chew toy, and if you got near him, he would growl.
Yeah.
So he's always
Yeah.
been protective over food.
Did you do anything like swapping with treats or anything to?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've tried
And that
like
usually
feeding
works.
it out of our hand, like the circle chew toy, and then telling him to leave it. And he does great when it's in your hand, but the second he has it, and then you tell him to leave it, then he's in all
Fight
like,
to the death.
defensive.
Correct. Yeah. Does he have any kind of release command, like a drop or an out?
We try leave it,
So I think he needs obedience training
yeah.
as well.
Sure.
but he'll listen sometimes on leave it. Like if we're just going for a walk and he like wants to grab a stick or something and we tell him to leave it, he'll retreat or whatever or leave it. But if he gets like something that he really wants, he doesn't listen to leave it.
Yeah. Okay.
And then he also eats a lot of sticks outside, like he just like eats them. And we're now too scared to go in his mouth. So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah. Good job.
a horrible situation in my opinion.
Anything else with this guy?
So the only other incident we had after he bit my husband, he bit a friend of ours over like a sock that,
But it was the same situation. He got
Yeah.
something in his mouth.
and there was
They
alcohol
went to get
involved,
it.
so we didn't handle the situation properly on all ends. So that was
Sure.
like probably our fault, but I mean, ideally we would be able to get him to leave an item and he would listen and we wouldn't have to end with biting.
Gotcha. And this like kind of behavior here, I mean, do you see that regularly or is it just in
This.
places?
This,
He
he
actually he's never done this before.
he's definitely an anxious dog, I would
Yeah.
say. Like when we go in the car, if one of us isn't sitting back there with him, he cries.
Or like, I guess the only other thing is this is like with the neighbor's dog.
Okay.
He sees the neighbor's dog on
He
the
gets
back
worked up.
porch. He like wants to go out there. So I don't know if there's another dog in the building or
Oh yeah, there's a
he,
few.
I think he smells another dog and wants to go investigate.
So what I have you do is swap your leash from his harness to his black collar here. And do you mind if I take the leash? Anything else about Bo here?
That's it.
Okay. So the resource guarding definitely is just here. It's a natural behavior for dogs, obviously. Okay. It's a natural behavior for dogs because they're primal. He doesn't understand that the object that you're giving him is yours, or you're giving him permission to have it. he just thinks you surrendered it, okay? So that's why we said when it's in our hand, he'll leave it no problem. The moment he has it, it's an issue, right? It's because when you give it to him, he doesn't know that you bought it. He doesn't know that it's technically yours and you're borrowing it to him. He just thinks, hey, you surrendered this, and now this object is now mine, and I'm gonna protect it. Because I don't know if I'm gonna get it again, right? And even if you teach him like, hey buddy, I'm giving it right back to you, dogs don't think that way.
Yeah.
So resource guarding, what makes it simpler is that it's context based, okay? We know there's an object like a toy, a curtain, a sock, food or something like that. I always just assume that the dog's going to guard the object,
Right.
okay? And then we teach a formal release, which is if I say drop her out, it means surrender the object that you have. It is no longer yours, okay? So then if he, by choice, surrenders the object, there's nothing to guard.
Right.
Because he's saying, okay, I don't want this anymore. It's up for grabs, so to speak. Obedience is separate from all this stuff, okay? So like, let's say, going back to the situation where he charged you at the curtain, and you went into sit mode, that's obedience mode,
Right.
okay? If he did that to another dog, what do you think they would do?
Bite him.
Yes, okay? They wouldn't say, sit,
Yeah.
down,
Right.
stay, right? So, and this is super common with people, right? Because we got behavior mode and we have obedience mode. Right now, it looks like I'm putting him into a sit, but I'm actually not putting him into a sit, I'm telling him to relax, non-verbally. Okay, so every time he starts getting anxious and get worked up, I'm doing what we call pressure to help him de-escalate. But he's so worked up that his brain wants to move. So being stationary for him is difficult, okay? Earlier, what you guys were doing is you were petting. Now your intention, of course, was to soothe, but petting is a reinforcer, okay? So if you say, Bo, sit, and he sits, sometimes you pet the dog. Good sit. So here, if he's anxious, regardless of the reason why, you're actually telling him, keep being anxious. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm ignoring him. The only thing I'm actually doing when I'm touching him is directing him to chill out. Okay, so if you see my hand, I do this. I'm familiar with Caesar Milan,
Yeah.
the dog whisperer. So I'm very heavily influenced by Caesar. He was like the first person I studied. I didn't study with him, I just watched the TV show a lot. And he does this. And it creates this kind of pressure that mimics a dog bite. And every time he gets too wound up, I'm putting this pressure on him, and the moment he gives me what I want, I release that pressure to help de-escalate the brain. So in the beginning, there was a lot of fumbling around, right? And now as I have him more, he's gonna gradually start to de-escalate, and then finally lay down, like he did earlier. But then he escalated again, right? So, and this is nonverbal, because this is about expected behavior. So behavior and obedience are two different things. Obedience takes time to teach. It's unnatural for a dog to sit, stay down, come piss or heel on their cue. They're not born to do this stuff. It's something that we've created to have control of our dogs. Behavior, however, is immediate. If he did something right now, let's say you go to the dog park, and he starts barking at the dog for a ball, and the dog goes, I don't know you, it's the first time we met, but you're not gonna bark at me for the ball. Bite, right? They don't sit there and have a conversation
Right,
like,
this
hey.
is why we haven't taken it to talk.
Exactly. So, you know, when I talk to people or dog trainers, they're like, well, how are you doing that to a dog? They don't know what to do. I'm like, I'm telling them what to do. And all I want them to do is relax. I don't care about sit, stay down, come right now. I'm just telling them, dude, chill out. You're just in an empty room with one other person you've never met before, right? But you can get control immediately. You just have to assert yourself, okay? So I teach all these things. I always teach people how to understand the difference between obedience and behavior, okay? Because a lot of times I'll use obedience to fix a behavioral problem, which in that sense, I would have just corrected them to teach them, like, you don't charge me,
Yeah.
okay? But people think, oh my God, that's abuse. I'm like, it's not abuse. This is a dog bite, okay? This is a dog that didn't want to go in the kennel. That's why I got bit. It's that simple. This is for, the dog's here today, actually, he's here for daycare. He was here for board and train. The first day was board and train. Training went great, and then I had to go to see if he was going to fit in our kennel. The biggest kennel we had was 48 inches. He's a Great Dane. So I was actually just trying to see, are you going to fit in this kennel? And he's like, I'm not going in there. And he just turned around and bit me, okay? Because he'd never been in the kennel before. He'd never been told to do something. He established that right away with me, right? He wasn't like, you know what, man, I don't know you, so I'm not going to bite you, but I don't like the kennel. Like, that's not how I operate, okay? So right there, he used physicality to tell me something, okay? So same thing for dogs. When it comes to behavior, it's simply an aversive or something we don't want, okay? So if he's charging me for whatever reason, now you're not going to charge me, aversive, okay? Now, if he's not sitting or something like that, aversives are involved, but they're done differently, okay? It would be unfair for me to correct him for not sitting if I've never taught him how to sit in the first place, okay? It's like yelling at a kid who doesn't know how to do math when they were never taught math in the first place, right? So, but for me growing up, if I did something like, let's say I took something that was not mine, and I wasn't taught of the concept of stealing or whatever, I was still corrected, right? And then told afterwards, like, hey, this is something that we just don't do in society, right? Same thing for dogs.
Yeah.
They don't have to know each other. They don't have to have some kind of memo handed out. If a dog does something that another dog or other dogs disagree with in that moment, they correct it immediately, okay? So, in our world, it's a bit different. If you go to the store and you see like a person whose kid is like a huge brat, in your head you might think like, man, that kid needs some discipline, right? But we don't discipline the kid, you know? In their world, they discipline each other.
Right.
So, is this making sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, in terms of like, so again, resource guarding is separate. We would teach him how to release something on a cue, because you've already tried the training, the trading off thing, okay? That's not worked. So he just needs to have a formal release, and then what we do is I teach a default out, which means I had a dog where they would resource guard like anything, and you would not know. And then one day the husband walked around like a threshold, and the dog was like in a little nook, kind of tucked away with something, and he didn't know, and the dog bit him in the ankle just walking by. Okay?
Yeah.
So what we taught the dog was if you hear anybody walking within 5 feet of you, they would naturally just release the object. Okay, so that there's nothing to guard, and then once the person is gone, the dog can then go back to the object. So that's what we call the default out. Okay? Now that's like a precautionary thing that we do. I always tell people you want to make sure things are put up and stuff, that we're controlling the context, because it's kind of just there as a fail-safe. Okay? If something happens, maybe he guards the curtain again, and we're not expecting him to guard the curtain, right? It's been taught just in case, so that we don't get something happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then of course there's the formal, like if I say drop it, you release it and disengage completely. Then there's the obedience aspect of it, okay? And all these things kind of go hand in hand as a bigger puzzle. Obedience isn't what helps dogs with behavior issues.
Right.
It's the discipline behind it. It's the fact that there's consequence for not performing the behavior, for not performing as quickly as I want them to perform, not holding the position, right? So like, for me growing up, I was raised old school, I was spanked. If my mom said don't do that, it didn't mean anything until the day I got spanked. Right? Until there was some kind of aversive, where there was being grounded, being spanked or whatever, it was just don't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the whole talk the talk, walk the walk deal, right? Same thing for dogs. If I say drop it, and he's like, make me. And I try to take it from him, he's like, snap, right? I'm like, crap, what am I gonna do now? He's like, drop it means nothing now, right? And he's like, and I have more control over you than you have over me.
I feel like that's where we are.
Yeah.
He knows.
So, I'm assuming you guys did some research on me and how we train?
Not a ton, no. So I found you through Allie Weber.
Yeah, Winnie.
Yes,
Yeah.
Winnie, yes. And then I just saw that you specialize in behavioral training, which
Correct.
I know that we need, so.
Correct. So I do remote and e-collar.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm gonna explain what all that stuff is, okay? So, or remote, e-collar and remote's the same thing. I meant e-collar and prong collar. So prong collar is a spiky looking tool that you might see some dogs on. It's a great tool. It requires a little bit too much technical skill for most people. I really just train using remote collar, okay?
Is that the like high pitched sound?
That's something different.
Okay.
Some
Okay.
collars have a tone function on them. Okay,
Okay.
they'll come with a tone function or a vibrate function, if not both, and then what we call the stim function. Okay, You've probably heard of what's called a shock collar, okay? That's e-collar, but not really.
Got it.
Okay, shock collar comes from very cheaply made collars, 30, 40 bucks on Amazon or something like that. Also, when e-collars were first designed, they're not as refined as they were now, or are now. Let's say when they first came out, they only had 3 levels, low, medium, high. Ours has 127 levels. So 127 and high, setting 3 on the old collars are the same, but I have 124 more divisions now, okay? So before, it was shocking because it was just so harsh, low, medium, high, that's all you had.
Right.
So your dog was either yelping at a high or not listening at medium.
Right.
That's all you had. Here we can fine tune it, 40, 60, 50, 49, 51. I can really dial into the dog and the personality type, okay? It's also a miniaturized TENS unit. They use the technology on humans. If you've ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist, it's like those little circles that they put in the muscles with the wires that stimulate the muscles. That's an e-collar. Okay, so people think they're electrocuting their dog, and I go, no, you're not electrocuting your dog. It's just a stim. Correct. You can go to Walgreens and CVS on the back section, and you'll find TENS units. It's the same technology. Okay, they're 100% waterproof, half mile to 1 mile range depending on the collar that you're getting, and it's not electricity running through your dog's body. It's just a centralized current that only stimulates the muscles that it's making contact with.
Right.
So if it's on Bo's neck, it's going to only move Bo's neck muscles. You wouldn't see anything else happening anywhere else. Okay. So the reason why I use this tool, and I use it typically in puppies 6 months and older. You can technically start younger. It's just how people feel about it.
Right.
So like right now I have a 4.5-month-old Doberman puppy who's doing a 4-week boarding train. She's on e-collar. Okay, so we're already training her to be off leash because we're training. The training that we do here is lifelong, right? What that puppy leaves here knowing and learning is going to be applicable for the rest of that puppy's life. Okay, and we're able to achieve that because of remote collar. It's also very easy to transfer over to owners. So once we work with the dog and we teach everything, and the owner comes for their transfer lessons because they have to give the transfer the obedience to the owner.
Right.
Everything right off the bat just starts to transfer to the owners as long as they're doing the same things that we're doing. Okay, so that's what we focus on because everything's just press a button. Okay, it's not that the dog knows when I feel this button it means to sit. It's we've conditioned responses using the collar, and the dog has been conditioned enough that if we're doing the same thing, movement-wise, the dog interprets it the same. Okay, with prong collar, it takes a little bit too much technical skill. Because people tend to lock up as it is when they walk their dogs because their dogs pull, so they tend to pull them back. So then there's constant tension on the neck that's never being released. It also tends to be too confrontational for a lot of people because you have to actively yank your dog to apply a correction because a prong collar is designed to mimic a dog bite. That's why it looks the way it looks. People think of it and go, oh my God, it's a torture device. I'm like, no, it's literally meant to mimic a dog bite because that's what dogs do, they bite each other. So with the prong collar, the problem is it can make resource guarding escalate because now it's too confrontational, right? You tell him to drop, he doesn't drop. You go to yank his leash, and now you agitate him, right? Because now you're trying to bite him for something. But the thing is, even though he's only 5 months, if he decides, hey, I'm willing to fight for this, now you have an escalation, right? So if I correct him, and he's like, screw you, man, I'm not giving it up that easy, and he comes to bite me back, I would have to correct him again. But harshly, or more harshly, because I have to override. So now we have a conversation, and somebody's going to win. It's either going to be the dog or it's going to be me, right? But for the average dog owner, they don't have that skill to follow through, or they feel bad. Because the other thing is you have a 5-month-old puppy, right? And that tends to be a natural barrier for people.
Yeah.
But I tell people, I'm like, dogs bite their puppies, but humans feel that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right.
Whereas with the e-collar, it's at the press of a button, so there's a disconnect there. But it's also non-confrontational because he doesn't know where it's coming from. I don't have to yell at him. I don't have to be mean to him. I don't even have to be in the same room. He can be in here with the bone, and I can be over there in the hallway and tell him to drop it, and he'll release it. I don't even have to be in the room. People tend to think what we do with resource guarding is we're going to trigger the guarding behavior and then punish the dog for guarding. Okay, that's what most people think. And trainers that actually work on this stuff, that's exactly the opposite of how we work with it, okay? When you trigger confrontation, you're now in a moment, okay? You either have to resolve it or give up. Right. Because if I back off when he's growling at me, he just learned,
And
that
that's
works.
where we're at.
Yep, okay? So, It's perfectly safe to use. You can start even with a pup, this dog. Like I said, Azula, she's 4.5 months. Plus when we start to get these kind of behaviors, it's something that I want to nip in the bud right away,
Yes.
right? So like if this was my dog, for example, at 2 months, and I see the resource guarding, I'm already doing e-collar. Because I'm conditioning it from day one.
Yeah.
But people would think I'm being abusive or mean, and they go, no, I was like, because another dog was just biting for something, right? And I'm not slamming them. We don't, it's how people think how the tools are being applied.
Yeah.
It's completely opposite than what they actually think, or actually what we actually do. So what would dictate length of time and cost and everything is how much you're trying to accomplish overall, okay? Resource guarding, teaching to drop, all that stuff is easy. It just takes time, okay? It's probably like a 1 to 2 class thing, okay? And then I say practice, because what ends up happening sometimes is if we get a resource guarder and we start putting rules to things like the bone and the antler that we give them, is he may start to lose interest. And he's go, oh man, like having the bone isn't as fun as it used to be, because now there's rules. So now we see a dip and drive, okay? And in some cases, if I get really bad resource guarders and we're correcting them so much, is that they don't even want the object anymore. Okay, and I told the owner, well, it's either they don't want the object and they don't bite you, or they want the object and you're risking the dog biting. You know, so it's a really weird kind of spectrum. I don't know how it's going to work out. Every case is different. Okay, but that takes time to teach, because you can only practice that so many times, right? Like you can't like give him something, drop it, and give it back. Drop it, right? Because then he's gonna get tired of it. He's like, well, crap, I can't even enjoy this, so why would I even take
Why would I
it?
take it in the first place?
Yeah. So the next thing is just the obedience aspect of it. Come, or recall, heel, which is walking at your side, sit, stay down, come, place. All that stuff is dependent on what your life with Bo is gonna look like. If you know like you're gonna go hiking with Bo and he's gonna be off leash in places where there's gonna be deer and things like that, you need more or a higher level of training. If it's we walk our dog and we go to the dog park or would like to go to the dog park, that's a simpler level of training.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does your life, or what would your life with Bo here look like?
Probably the latter.
What you just explained.
Hiking and all that stuff?
No
hiking.
Oh, so it's not the hiking, the
Just
dog
walks
park.
and dog park. And honestly, our biggest
social.
obedience problem is leave it.
Yeah.
Because
He's
he's
good at
almost
the
like a
other stuff.
I googled it. He's like a scavenger outside. Like he'll eat.
Mhm.
Just looking for
Constantly
shit
searching
everywhere.
for the next thing to put in his mouth.
And that's something you can also correct with the remote collar, because it's just don't do that. Okay, so obedience is do that or do this. So behavior is don't do that or do this.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Okay, that's the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah.
And it's actually better to teach a dog what not to do than to focus on what to do. Because a bulk of what people's problems come from with their dogs, dog jumps, dog barks, resource guards, right? Howls. That's all a bunch of don't do that stuff,
Right.
right? Telling the dog to sit doesn't have any impact on the howling or the jumping or the barking or anything like that.
Right.
It's completely separate, okay? So, questions so far about this stuff?
I don't think so.
So it's like a lifetime-ish, like the collar with the.
Yes and no.
is a- Okay.
It's, so you guys drive?
Yeah.
Did you go on the expressway?
No.
Not right now, because we're pretty much at home.
Okay, but have you been on the expressway?
Yes.
You driven on it, yeah. Do you guys go the speed limit?
A little faster.
Most people don't go the speed limit.
Right.
We can agree on that, right? But then you see a squad car when it happens.
Slow down.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
So it's called opportunistic behavior. Okay, so think of the e-collar as a cop in the collar. When Bo has it on, he's gonna be better behaved. When he has it off, he's gonna push things a bit more. Okay?
Got it.
So humans do it, all animals do it. It's actually part of survival instinct. So like if we have like a pond of water and there's like an alligator in it or something, and the animals know, they don't drink water. If they see the alligator leave or the threat leave, they'll come drink water because they know it's safe. And then when the threat comes back, they leave. It's opportunistic behavior, right? So same thing for Bo here. So then it goes, well, how does this apply to resource guarding, right? Because he's not gonna have the collar on all the time. So inside the home, e-collar, much more likely to go away because you don't really do much at home, right? And this depends on the case. So if I have a really aggressive dog that like even bites the owners, they're looking at having that collar on more often than not,
Yeah.
right? For the average dog owner, the dog is wearing it outside because there's things you can't account for outside. And inside the home, it's only when needed or sometimes not at all, right?
Okay.
So like let's say with Bo here, in the beginning, he's probably gonna be wearing it more often than not, okay? Because we don't know what he's gonna guard, okay? key guards, okay? Toys, bones, antlers, all that stuff. Curtains, yeah. Curtains you can keep them. Stuff that would typically be dog stuff, right? So that we have control over that.
Yeah.
So when I give him something, I know that I'm giving him something, so I would want to prep beforehand. He'd already be colored up.
Yeah.
Now you have the object, okay? Because remember, it's going to take time before you condition a very reliable release what you have, okay? The other thing is, in order to get to a point where it's, hey, he's chewing on the curtain, you need to stop that and correct them, because that's very organic, okay? When we set these things up, it's controlled. Dogs are able to differentiate between organic situations and set up situations, okay? So that's where having the collar on more often than not in the beginning comes into play. Because if he's chewing on the curtain, and I can either correct him for doing it, so he just learns not to do it, or drop it, and then I can make him drop it using the collar. But that has to be done repeatedly, right, on a consistent basis. So he learns, okay, drop it means drop it no matter what. Because what most people tend to do is they ease up on things when they start to see progress, and then the dog finds the opportunity, and then the owner's stuck, and they go drop or out. But they've not done enough yet to even work when the dog is in an organic situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll give you other means of correcting him. And also just using discretion. If he has something and I'm not set up, right? I'm like, crap, I don't have a remote, or I don't have an e-collar or whatever, I would alt for other things, like redirecting him to something.
Which that works most of the time. We'll just get a different treat out or something.
Sure.
Like a bone.
Because it takes the brain off the object, right? But like if he's got something of higher value, and he's like, that's like a sock, that's where we get stuck, right? So that's where things get a little tricky. The good thing is he's 5 months. So you're able to assert yourself a bit more than if you were to be a full grown, you know, was gonna be like 60, 70 pounds, yeah, then you have a bigger problem there. This is why when I get clients that have big, powerful dogs like Rotties, Dobermans, Cane Corsos, German Shepherds and stuff, I'll tell them when your puppy is 2 months, start disciplining them. Because what happens is people ignore stuff for the first year and then they want to discipline them. But it's like trying to discipline a teenager who you've never disciplined your entire life. There's going to be some buck back, right? They're going to want to protest on things. So you want to start that process sooner rather than later. Okay? Questions so far?
I do think, and I would like to get your thoughts on this, I feel like he has anxiety, like
a little bit.
Yeah. But is that just all, like, as he gets more comfortable and we get him into this trained state? Like,
what's his exposure to stuff been? Like, what's his, like, is it just been him in the house and going on, like, walks in the neighborhood, or has he been to places?
He's been to places.
Okay.
So,
Here
like,
and there.
my siblings have puppies, and he's met them. He's
But
gone to
we
people's houses
brought-
that he's had.
Yeah, we brought him over last weekend, and the first thing he did, we let him off leash, and he started guarding the other dog's bed, the other dog's water bowl.
Beds too, sure.
Yeah.
It was insane for the first like 5 minutes,
But
and
then once he kind of
down.
like,
he's
asserted
fine.
himself.
But yeah, we walked the 606. He's actually great with other dogs.
Outside of, like.
Yeah, when it's like a quick meeting. But I think when it starts to be like a territory thing, like in someone else's house, he freaks out. We were at a lake house a couple weeks ago with an older dog, and they did great together. He was like 3 or 4, but the older dog like growled at him a few times and then
Corrected him,
we've been to like our parents' houses, like a handful of places. We're not like bringing him somewhere every day. I would say most of the time he's in our house and he's going on a few walks a day.
Yeah, so earlier what you saw, I did pick up some anxiety there. Anxiety more so from overstimulation. So anxiety and overstimulation was very similar. It's the brain's inability to relax. Okay, so anxious energy wants to move. That's why he kept barking and moving and fidgeting and stuff. And when I first took him, how he was fidgeting so much, and it just kept countering him. But it's not anxiety in the sense that, like, here you can see he's calmed down, right? But I just kept asserting myself over him every time, and now I was like, all right, because I put rules to the brain. Because overstimulation is almost always just lack of boundaries, okay? Because our form of boundaries for a puppy is like no, clapping your hands, putting them in timeout in the kennel, you know, ignoring them if they're barking at you and all that stuff, whereas another dog would just bite them.
Right.
Okay? So once dogs start to get formal boundaries and rules, you start to see the brain relax. Because now it's actually it has limitations, okay? And it comes through physicality. So here, I don't have to be mean or harsh or anything in terms of what I do, I just have to be consistent and enough to counter him. Because if I was trying to be gentle with him on stuff, you know, like when you saw, like I was physically putting pressure on him, but not a ton, right? Enough to override him, okay? So now he's like, all right, when I'm with Jesse, all this bullshit that I was doing before is not allowed. And I did no obedience with this dog, okay? So that's the behavioral aspect of it. So the more he gets of discipline, that should go away, okay? Because it's just lack of formal, you know, he hasn't been spanked yet, so to speak, okay? So in terms of like length of time and cost and stuff, I have 3, 6, 9, and 12 week programs. You're like in the 6 to 9-ish week range, okay? And that's once a week for an hour. The way I would approach this, first thing we have to do almost always is teaching the heel, how to walk on the leash at our side.
Which we try to do.
Okay.
He listens some of the time.
Yeah.
We want all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, I don't care what the environment is. I don't care if you're at Home Depot, I don't care if you're at the park, I don't care if there's a parade of dogs walking around him, he's on your hip.
Right.
I teach a very structured heel. If I take 5 steps, they take 5 steps, I take 3 steps, they take 3 steps. When I stop, they automatically set, okay? And this with a completely slack leash, up to no leash if the owner wants. Once we get that into the brain, each week I will ask you follow up, like, how are things going at home, okay? Possibility, in certain contexts, the resource guardian may just go away. Because now he's not big tough guy anymore.
Right.
Because now he's getting disciplined, okay?
Established, yeah.
But if he gets something of like the sock or like the high value thing, I would expect resource guardian to kick it. Because now there's something worth it, okay? So we do the class of heel, that's the first class. You come back class 2. How's it going? You know what, Jesse, he's more relaxed. He's not as stimulated when we go to places now. He's pretty chill. He's lost interest in the curtain, like things that he would normally like take and guard, because a lot of those things can also come from frustration, because his needs are not being met. Okay, so if we start to see him relax, we start to see him target things less. We start to see less resource guarding. Okay, then we come back second class. We review the second part of heel, catch up on things. We'll see you in a week. Class 3, we would most likely start delving into the resource guarding. Okay, I teach you the exercise, and then it's now start repeating and practicing at home. That's going to take time. Come back class 4, how's it going? His drive is dipped, he's not wanting things as much or whatever, or maybe it's going well, you know, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but then I follow up on with you with some instructions. That'll be homework for resource guarding, and then we can jump into recall. Because a lot of it is super simple. Remote training is super simple, and it's common sense stuff. So as long as you understand how the remote collar works and how to find his levels and everything, it's pretty straightforward. So then class 4 would be recall. Come back class 5. How are things going with the resource guarding? Hey, he's starting to relax more. It's easier to work with him on releasing things and stuff like that. Great, any questions about it? Nope, we're gonna keep practicing. All right, we're gonna work on the second half of recall, okay? Then you come back to class 6. How's it going? You know, going good. Working on the resource guarding stuff, but otherwise he's not been a problem. And it's just kind of educating you on prevention, intervention, different things you can do if you're not set up, because, you know, humans are, we're not as consistent as we would like to be, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be inconsistencies, and just knowing how to address situations when you're not set up in the moment. Right, so like let's say he just happens to guard something, you know, like a shoelace, and like, oh crap, right? Well, we don't have anything on him and he's guarding. What do? We either use a redirect or we do something else. But then, let's say you inadvertently challenge him, and he comes and starts charging at you. You would have to correct that behavior.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how do you do that?
I usually use bumpers. Bumpers is a roll of towel. Roll a towel, you use rubber bands to keep it shape, and you literally just bump the dog with it. Okay? So if he comes charging at me, he's literally just whack. Because you have to bite him back.
Right.
Right? There has to be an turn. Then he gets, he goes, holy crap. Maybe charge me using that, a good idea. Because if you charge with a dog, he'll just bite him.
Right.
Right? But people think, you know, there's a notion that positive reinforcement can train or fix everything, and it's a lie. Because if that was the case, there would be a lot more well-trained dogs outside. Because it's the most common and approved and accepted form of dog training is positive reinforcement. Okay? A lot of the dogs that I get are positive reinforcement trained. I'm not against it. I just know its limitations. Okay? It's great for stuff you want to see again. Okay? But if you go outside and chasing squirrels is more rewarding than coming back to you and getting that piece of chicken, he's gonna chase squirrels. He's a dog. He's a predator. So that's where aversives come into play. Because I can use the e-collar to make him return if he tries to blow me off. Okay? Questions about any of that stuff?
No.
With the 9-class program, that's kind of like giving yourself a bigger window to come back and we can continue working on things with the resource guarding. So like you could do the first 6, you pay for 9, you do 6, because I know it's gonna be time. Month and a half goes by, you come back, hey Jesse, this is where we're at with this. Okay, these are the next steps, we work on a few things. We'll see when you're ready for the next one. A few months go by, come back for class 8. This is where we're at with this. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we can space out.
You can space them out, correct.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, they'd be in succession, because you need to get all that stuff down. And the last bit, because like I said, resource guarding is gonna take time and repetition,
Right.
is you would just come back whenever you need another kind of follow-up, okay? So like when I get my clients that do 12 classes, because they want full, complete off-leash training,
Yeah.
once we hit class 8 or 9, and we've taught everything that there is to teach, the last classes are to help them advance their training.
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll practice, they'll screw up, they'll make mistakes, they'll create problems, they'll forget things that I say. They'll come back a month later, hey, this is where we're at, okay, we're gonna fix these things here, I'll see you in another month. Okay, until eventually by the time they hit the 12th class. So even though it's like a 4-month program, it's really a 12 or 3-month program. It's really 6 to 9 months, because we start to space out the end of it
Right.
to help people, because you need time to practice. You're gonna get sick, you're not always gonna be able to go to the park every single day or whatever to like practice stuff. So I take that into account so that people have the time to do all those things and not just like feel rushed into it. Okay. So you're like 6 or 9 classes in terms of addressing the resource guarding, leash walking, and recall. Those 2 things are the most important commands. Everything else is superficial. If you want them to be able to like hold a stationary position, like if you go somewhere new, we cover stuff like that as well, depending on what program you do.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it on that stuff. Questions on any of that?
I don't think so, but I am curious about the daycare and boarding situation as well. I do think part of it, and I grew up with golden retrievers and never had this resource guarding issue, but they went to daycare multiple days a week just to get more activity, and so yeah. So like, do you think that that's something that he needs, or I would imagine, I hope he can get to a point where he'll be able to be around other dogs, but maybe
Okay,
not
so
first.
what makes you think he can't be around
I
other
don't
dogs?
know, I worry about his behavior, about something bad happening with a stranger.
Okay. So you're
So he's
talking about,
off leash, like in a dog park, like we haven't done that because I'm too scared.
okay. And so let's say you go to the dog park, for example, and like there's a tennis ball, and he guards the tennis ball is what you're kind of like worried about. Okay, so that's super common. Again, I can't make him like other dogs being around him with the tennis ball, but what we do is remove the tennis ball as an option, not by removing the tennis ball, by removing it as an option. So if he's like, tennis ball, and he runs there, I'm correcting him on the collar, and I'm teaching him that is off limits. So every time he tries to go for the ball, he gets corrected. Eventually he's like, crap, every time I try to grab that tennis ball, this happens, but if I just ignore it, nothing happens. So there's nothing to guard, okay? Because he has to possess it in order to guard it, okay? And I have one dog for sure who guards, who got in a fight at the dog park over the tennis ball, and then, made the owner really kind of nervous about it. It's exactly what we did. I said, you go to the park, if it's just you and your dog, play fetch all you want. But if another dog runs into the picture, release your dog from the ball, put the ball away. It's now not an option anymore because it's his ball. I was like, if you go to the dog park, because she's social. It's just if there's something
Right,
around.
that's how he is too, he's
Yeah,
great,
exactly.
but
Yeah.
if there's something.
So you can remove things as an option without having to remove them. Okay, you just remove it as an option on his brain. So if my mom took me to the store and she's like, Jesse, you can have any toy you want, no more than $15. it removes options. Okay, same thing for dogs. In terms of daycare or boarding, no problem. Daycare, is it something he needs? Not really. That's really just a human preference, you know. Our daycare is structured. It's not a free-for-all all day, which for like more anxious type personalities is good because overstimulation and anxiety kind of go hand in hand. So the dogs that we've trained get more options for the day because they've been trained by us. So like we do duration work where they'll sit on the placemat for anywhere between an hour to 2 hours. While you know dogs are being trained in front of them, puppies are playing, dogs are playing over here, people are walking around, clients are coming through for training, and they're just there chilling out. So all this activity is happening, but they're just there calm. We do, of course, play as well. We do treadmill time. So they do structured physical exercise, not just running around excited type exercise. They also get breaks during the day to decompress in the kennel. And it's all on the floor. So my space is one big open space. So when you walk in, you'll see like placemats here, there's a puppy pen here, there's treadmills over here, there's a playpen here, and then like the daycare kennels here. So the dogs that are in daycare are actually on the floor. We don't separate them. So they're still seeing all this activity or they're sleeping and activities going on, and they're learning I don't have to always be a part of it.
Yeah, he needs to learn that.
So when you go to other places, it's usually loud with a lot of barking, even with the dogs like in the kennels and stuff like that, because it's just too much overstimulation. So like right now, it's the weekend, so it's slower. We have like maybe 8 dogs here. But like during the day, people always ask, they're like, are there dogs here? And I'm like, yeah, we have like 30, 40 dogs in the back. They're like, really, it's so quiet. Like, it's because it's structured. We don't allow, you know, free-for-all stuff. And when it comes to like dogs that guard and stuff, we always just assume a dog's a resource guard, so we always keep things put away, unless we're going to actively engage with them with it. But we make notes on that stuff, so we know to avoid or work around certain things. Okay. Other questions?
Can we see the floor?
Anything else?
So I guess, so we're obviously then we're gonna do, so it's a weekly training, would we come here for it every week?
Yes and no. So right now we're working out of my facility because we're just coming over the winter. And I'm waiting for the weather to be consistent because I trained, so last year because of COVID, I used to do home to home, where I traveled to all my clients. Then COVID happened and nobody wanted people coming to their home. So I was like, all right, well, I know I can train dogs and not need to touch the dog, but where do I go? So then I started training at Oz Park because Oz Park is the busiest park in Chicago. People, dogs, baseball games, tennis courts. There was bar mitzvahs going on last year, you know, baby showers. We saw everything. We're training. So all this stuff is going on, so people loved it because they're like, man, we're out in the real world and we're like training stuff. But we're doing here for now, but I'm gonna start transitioning over to Oz Park pretty soon because the weather's starting to change. When there's inclement weather, like rain or anything like that, we just meet here for that lesson or that week, whatever. Otherwise, if I try to push back, I'll get super backed up on my schedule. But yeah, we're starting to do that now, transfer over to Oz Park. The only stuff that really needs to be done outside is the obedience stuff. The resource guarding can be done within a controlled context. Because sometimes with resource guarding, if the environment is more stimulating, like he's not gonna care about what we're trying to work with. You know, so it's better to be in a bland environment for that, so you can actually get repetitions in, and then you practice at home. But the other stuff like obedience, like the heel and recall, ideally is best done outside because that's where it's realistic. In terms of the cost of collar and stuff, if he's going to be a 60 to 70 pound dog, the collar I recommend is the Dr. Black edition, and Maria would send you this information. It's meant for 70 pounds and over. So if he ends up being a little bit over 70 pounds and stuff, perfectly fine. It's perfectly safe to use on a small dog. Azula, the Doberman, is on a Dr. Black edition, and she's only like maybe 25-ish, 30-ish pounds right now. I could use it on an 8-pound Chihuahua because it just means it's lower number because it's more output. Okay, so if you got a weaker collar, your number would be higher because it's less output. So you just end up getting more from less essentially. Okay, so since he'll grow into it, he might look a little funny in the beginning because it's a bigger collar meant for an adult dog, but he'll grow into it no problem. Fully waterproof system, 1 mile range. Expect that when you walk him outside and stuff, whenever you're gonna be outside in the environment, he's gonna have his collar on. And it's not that you're always using it, it's simply present, right? And it's there in case something happens, right? Let's say he's playing at the dog park, a dog walks into the group with a ball in his mouth and he's like, hey, I want that ball. He starts to go for it. Yep, that's not gonna happen today. Okay, you have a means of correcting him even when he's off leash. Or if like an emergency happens, most common thing that's happened to clients throughout the years is fireworks. They'll be outside at the park and then somebody just randomly sets up a firework and their dog gets spooked and tries to take off. E-collar is the, in my opinion, only tool that can get you to as close to 100% reliability as possible, even in an emergency situation, because you can override the dog. It's just a matter of, can you do it? You know, because people tend to panic. But I've had it happen to a few clients where they've had to like jack up the collar maxed out and continuous the dog, which is the harshest correction you can give, to make essentially the dog more scared of running away from them than they are running away from the firework. Okay, and I talk about that stuff during the training as well, because I want people to be prepared for when shit happens, because that's when your obedience really matters. Otherwise, I think that's pretty much it. 6 to 9 classes what I'd recommend, and then the dogs with black edition. Okay? And then if you brought him here, if you did do daycare after training and stuff, you bring him with his equipment, we reinforce the training here too. Okay? So it's not like he goes here, he gets a day off, and then gets to come back home all wound up. Everything's reinforced. Okay?
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it.
Alrighty, so I'll give you this guy. I'll give you a quick little walk around here.
Is there anything we should be doing, like, in the beginning?